hope for years to come. Our Master, our King, my Messiah, the strength of my life, my hope. I love you. I acknowledge you. I need you. I believe you. I trust you. I lean on you. I rest in your faithfulness. I acknowledge your goodness. I acknowledge your mercy. No one will stand if it wasn't for your mercy. No one would be able to do anything if you didn't say yes. Life can be impossible, but with you, nothing is impossible. Strength of our life, the only reason why we live, it's in you we move and we have our being. Come this morning. Come and show yourself strong on our behalf. Help our hearts to reach out to you this morning, that the things you proposed in your heart to do, you'll be able to do them. That, Lord, you will do even exceedingly abundantly far above that which we're able to ask or even think or even imagine. Come in your strength. Come in your power. Come in your glory. Worship His majesty. Unto Jesus be all glory, honor, and praise. Kingdom authority, flows from His throne unto His own. His hands and praise. So exalt, lift up on high the name of Jesus. Magnify, come glorify Christ Jesus the King. Oh, majesty. Worship His majesty. Jesus who died, now glorified, King of all kings. So exalt, lift up on high Blessed be the name of the Lord. You may be seated. God bless you. I don't know if you guys checked your audio. Are you guys ready? Are you sure you're ready? We've had, it's been 3 months, and everything we've done in the first 3 months has been about your own development. Amen? And we're going to be concluding this morning. Both services are going to be interactive. But you will notice that for this first service, I don't have anybody on stage yet. Because, one, I wasn't sure who's going to come. That's the first problem you have. Secondly, who's going to come on time. Then number two, we're not usually many in this service. And so I felt everybody can participate in this one. Now, to save us the trouble, I have gathered together 3 videos that I want us to watch, and then we're going to comment on them afterwards. The first one is a recap of this third habit, which is what? Putting first things first. However, the author is Stephen Covey. He is going to focus on the quadrant, the habit 2 quadrant. So I'm sorry, the second quadrant habit. And so what I want you to do is to listen, and then we're going to sit down and talk. And this is probably going to extend into the coffee break. So at about 9 o'clock, I'm going to ask them to serve you your coffee break, so that we can finish maybe at about 9:15 or so that we can get a good feel. There are 3 videos I want to show you. This first one is about the habits themselves. But how many of you were blessed by Mrs. Adefisayo's teaching? There's something about somebody who's learned this thing. When they teach it, it's a whole lot different. And those of us who just tap in to it at short notice. But it's even more wonderful to hear it from the horse's mouth himself. So I want you to listen to this. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to get a few comments from you. Make some points down, and we'll see where we go from there. And you'll see why in a minute, why this is so crucial. Especially when Mrs. Adefisayo showed us how much time we were wasting in the other quadrants and how we need to concentrate on this particular quadrant. And I feel I said it last week, that sometimes in Christianity, we forget that some of the solutions God gives us are physical or intellectual. We always assume that everything God does is spiritual. But no. God bless you.
The key words to understand are importance and urgency. Importance and urgency. Importance basically comes from within you. Importance is your value system, hopefully based upon principles. Importance is your mission, your central strategy to accomplish those high priority goals and plans to implement that strategy. Urgent comes from the environment. It presses upon you. It's proximate. It's right in front of you. It's often very popular. It could be deep into a social value system. You have to decide what is truly important. That's why I asked you. Notice the question. What are the most important things to you? And then, what are the single activities that you know without any question, by doing those consistently, superbly well, would accomplish marvelous results? See, you've identified what's important. We call this a time management matrix. There are 4 quadrants. Now, quadrant 1, you'll notice, is both urgent and important. It's like that important client that is contacting Elizabeth in her international consulting business. But it's not at a convenient time. But it's a pressing need on the part of that client. Quadrant 1. She needs to attend to it. It's important. It's also urgent. Quadrant 1 is where you tend to move toward crisis, toward problems. If you're not in that meeting, you'll have a problem. So it's a quadrant 1. You have to be in that meeting. So it's either a present problem or a problem in the making if you neglect it. Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but it is important. Prevention, preparation, planning, relationship building, empowerment, sharpening the saw, self-development, setting up mission statements. Quadrant 2 is the leadership quadrant. Quadrant 3 is not important, but it is urgent. Those things that are pressing, sometimes even popular, proximate, right in front of you, but not important. And 4 is neither urgent nor important. That would be symbolized by these small rocks, these green pebbles. All right, now, look at your paper. Look at your answers to those 2 questions. What quadrant were those answers in? What would you say? One activity that you know would produce marvelous results. Yes, sir. What did you have down? What quadrant? Quadrant 2. Now, why isn't it 1? Because you're not now doing it. It's not urgent. The low urgency need. When we're driven by the urgent, when we are addicted to the urgent, it drives us into what quadrants? 1 and 3. In fact, you examine most executive agendas against the 4 quadrants, and you'll find almost all of them are 1 and 3. 2 is usually called other business. What happens then to 2? It gets pushed aside. 2 represents the big rocks. They're pushed aside. Now what happens to 1? It gets larger. How long can you sustain quadrant 1 lifestyle? Doesn't it soon beat you up? Doesn't it burn you out eventually? How many have felt burned out by quadrant 1? Managing fires, the pounding surf, mending fences. Eventually it takes its toll on your body, on your mind. But then the dilemma is faced. Where do you get time for quadrant 2? When you're inundated by quadrant 1 things that are both important and urgent. You neglect quadrants 3 and 4. You literally say no. 4 isn't difficult. One of the reasons people move to 4 is because they are so beat up by 1. So 4 is essentially wasted anyway. Then the key is to take it from 3. Those things that are pressing, sometimes even popular, proximate, right in front of you, but not important. To say no to them. Goethe taught, things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. You can do this kind of work, this quadrant 2 work, when there is a burning yes inside you about the mission and the purpose and the value system. You can say no to all kinds of unimportant, however urgent other things may be. People will begin to see you differently. They won't just come and throw quadrant 3 things to you all the time, like I did one time to one of the managers who reported to me. Yeah, it's really urgent, but it was obviously quadrant 3 from his point of view. He said, sure, I'll work on it if you want. Pulled down his project board. I saw all the projects, deadline dates, how far he'd gone. I realized I'm dealing with someone who has purpose and organization here. I'm not going to mess up this person's life and get involved in reordering this system. So I said, well, I'll find somebody else, and I threw it to another crisis manager. Now, what if it's your boss that gives you a quadrant 3 project? By definition, what does that make it? 1. What is important to another person must be as important to you as the other person is to you. That's why most of you put down on your first things first list your relationships with your loved ones, your family. I know you did. I'll bet there's not an exception in this entire room. There's also not an exception in this room that the things you wrote down under the last 2 questions are all quadrant 2. Preparation, prevention, values clarification, planning, relationship building, true recreation, or empowerment. Now notice, all of those have to do with relationships, either with self or preparing toward future relationships or the rebuilding of relationships. All 7 habits are in quadrant 2. All 7 of them. Habit 1, to be proactive. You have to be proactive to act on quadrant 2. Why? Quadrants 1 and 3, what? Act on you. So you just react to them. You have to be proactive to act on quadrant 2. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Why would that be quadrant 2? It's not urgent to develop a mission statement or a clear sense of what this day, this week, this month, or these goals under each role is, see? Nothing's pressing me to do that. You are proacting the writing of those programs. Habit 3 is where quadrant 2 is taught. Habits 4, 5, and 6 is the process of involving other people in a communication process in moving toward synergistically solving problems. That means come up with solutions that are better. And habit 7, sharpening the saws, the renewal habit, obviously is quadrant 2 activity. Seriously, people that start to think in quadrant 2 ways will gradually change their job, their environment. Now they have to be wise and sensitive, but they're proactive. They're doing things to make things happen. They have become a force of nature. That's quadrant 2 thinking.
Could you hear? The sound was a bit bad, right? Pastor Sean, can we please increase the volume next time and clean up the sound, either from here or from there, so that people can hear what he says. But we can't, because of time, we can't go back. We'll do it for the other 2 videos that we want to watch. But I want you to look at, I've been thinking for the last, I think this is my 20-something year in ministry. And I think maybe 6 or 7 years, I've been teaching on the 7 habits. Sometimes we take it as the whole church when I was in Jesus Embassy. And when we were here also, we took it as a topic for the main service. And today, when I began to watch this video, I began to realize one of the greatest problems I've had, that every time we teach the 7 habits, very little change happens in church. And that's because of what he said here. All the 7 habits are in where? The second quadrant. You teach it, but because they are not urgent, people do what? Push it aside. So before I start to throw questions at you, who wants to say something about what you just watched now? That part, and then the other part I want you to notice was what he spoke about. The more you ignore that quadrant, the more the unnecessary quadrant gets what? Bigger. And then finally he said, when you continue in that quadrant, and I'm sure Nigerians can identify with this. If you continue in that quadrant 1, you get burnt out, you get tired, you get exhausted, because you are chasing after diesel, you are chasing after water, you are trying to buy fuel, you are fixing this and fixing that. So most of your energy is put in a quadrant that almost kills you. And you can spend a lifetime in quadrant 1. Who wants to say something before I take this a little bit further? Did you get anything out of it? Did it make sense? Huh? Now, even if you couldn't hear, you could get some of the principles very, very easily. And so one of the greatest difficulties we're having in church is making people realize that even though we are teaching these things that seemingly are not urgent, and because they are not urgent, you're not going to spend your energy moving to that quadrant until it's a willful decision that you have to make. Are you here? Are you here? It's so fundamental. I didn't see it until he said it, that all the 7 habits are in the second quadrant. And that's the, do you know, where would you put savings, for instance? Where would you put savings? Quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? 2. Where would you put investment? Where would you put building your house? Come on, talk to me. 2. But where will you put buying a car? 1. Come on now, talk to me. Have you noticed? You need to be conscious. Now, before some of you say these people are not spiritual in this church, because I know you guys, let's look at an example in the Bible. Very common example. We all know the story Mary and Martha. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. What did he say? Luke chapter 10, verse 38. What did he say? Because some of you are going to say, well, they're teaching one of those things again. What did he say? Let's look at it, if they can find it. I'm going to read it from here. Now it happened that they went and entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed them into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha, look at how the Bible described her, was what? Look at the word he used. Distracted. Would you ever associate the word distraction with serving? After all, I serve in my church. After all, I serve in my, you know what I mean? Come on, talk to me. Would you ever connect the word distraction and serving? Because in church we rate you by your service, isn't it? Come on. Is that wrong? Oh, no, you can't answer. Is that wrong? It's not wrong to rate you by your serving, right? Good. We'll confirm that in a minute. All right? Let's finish this. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me alone to serve? Therefore tell her to help me. And Jesus answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled by many things, but one thing is needed. What did he say? One thing is needed. Quadrant 2. Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. In other words, he's saying to her, or saying to all of us here, that there is something I regard more important than service. But it's not urgent. Do you agree? Now, why? Listen to me. When Jesus was being tempted by the devil, who can remember the first temptation? Well, there was, don't worry, there's no strict order in which temptations happen, because Matthew will put some in a slightly different order, Mark will put it slightly different, so there's no rigid story about it. But who can remember the first one that's common to all three? What did he say? Turn bread to, okay. What's the second one? If you remember. Fall down and do what? Good. Now, some of them will put the other one first. Now, watch this. What was Jesus' answer? I'm not putting it up. Don't put it up on the screen for them. This is sad. If you are a Christian and you don't know what Jesus said, how have you been dealing with the devil? Okay, put it up. Yeah? Sorry? Sorry? That's for the first temptation. What's the answer for the second one? That's good. What's the other one? That you worship, and him shall you. God himself is telling you that without worship, your service is unacceptable. But sitting at Jesus' feet is worship. How do I know? In Isaiah, the Bible says the angels came, covered their face. They had 6 wings. With 2, they covered their face. With 2, they covered their what? And with 2, they flew. Covering your face, covering your feet is worship. Flying is service. Where does God put his emphasis? Do you know that we regard attending church the same level, because we call it worship service, which is a contradiction in terms? We regard coming to church as being the ultimate worship we can give to God. When the true important worship that you need to give to God is the one you do with him on a regular basis between you and him. This is service. Collins, tell them to put on the air conditioner. People are going to sleep or not. All right, let them put on the air conditioners. Are you here? Do you get where I'm going? Listen to me. There are distractions, and unfortunately for you and I had to speak at the funeral of Dr. Farotmi on Friday. Well, I just had to make one of few statements on Friday, and on Thursday I was at the service. I'll tell you what he said in the network service. But this is one of the things I'm beginning to realize with most of us is that we all fail to understand that no matter how you do it, you have a limited time on earth. In Revelation, the Bible says God gave that woman space to repent. All you have in this life is space. What is filling that space? You see, about 2 years ago, and it was a good thing, 3 years ago, I decided to follow a very strict diet. Don't take meat, don't do this, don't do that. For my health, I recovered, and you all know about it. God healed me somehow. I don't know how, but he did. Because by the time I went back for the test, it had gone. Now, this is the problem. When I came back, I suddenly realized that I was living a very restrictive life. I suddenly began to realize that, wait a minute, these fads of don't eat this, don't eat this. The real question I should be asking myself is why? I want to live long. Rabbi, isn't it? But it's not my living long that matters. It's what I do with the long life I'm asking for. I was making fun in Lagos, and I said, Bob Marley said, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Almost running out of time. Is it making any sense so far? I could go on, but let me stop. I need to stop because I want to show you one or two more videos before we cross the line. You can't substitute service for worship. You can't bribe God with service. And we also do it with offering. Come on, talk to me. I'm going to give God 100,000 so to make up for all the time I didn't do church, all the time I didn't worship, so that he can bless me. That's bribery. Do you think they take bribe in heaven? Now I'm going to show you another video now. And I want to ask you before the video. As well as they should, but they will. Amen? Who knows what the job of fire station is? Huh? Tell me now. Jide, where's the mic? Somebody should tell me what the function of a fire station is. Yeah, what's the job of a fire station? You don't have to stand.
To employ people.
To employ people. Okay, that's good. I didn't see that one coming.
And put out fire.
And to put out fires. Everybody
and to develop strategies for being more effective.
Good. That's good. He gave 3 answers. I think only one, I think, is what I'm going to fully rally with. Because I always thought myself that the whole job of a fire station is to put out fires. But I want you to watch this video. Do something about the volume this time. Leave it, it's playing now.
I think that a fireman spends his whole day looking for fires. I think a fireman spends his whole day rescuing people from fires.
I think at one time the feeling was in the fire service that buildings were going to burn and our main job was to extinguish them. And I think years ago, maybe because of money, maybe because of it wasn't exciting, the emphasis wasn't on fire prevention.
In the history of the fire service, it was always waiting for the big one to come in and having to go for that big one. And now, and most people think all we have to do is go on calls. And it's our primary focus. It's the number one thing. If a call comes in, we drop everything else that we're doing. Those are our fires to put out.
When the general public thinks about the fire department, they think about the fire truck streaming down the street, go into a fire with the fireman hanging on the back. However, I have a job that's not as glamorous as that. I'm the one that goes out and tries to prevent fires by making sure the buildings are built right, making sure the fire suppression systems are correctly installed.
We now realize, and today's firefighters realize, that fire prevention tours, fire prevention walkthroughs, fire prevention inspections, fire education training programs, teaching CPR, tours of the fire station, working with today's children who are tomorrow's leaders and could stop fires is not embarrassing, and it is part of their job.
We spend a lot of time in schools educating the kids ahead of time. Learn not to burn, stop, drop, and roll.
Okay, everyone knows what this is, don't they? Yeah? Come here, you want to hold it? Come on. You can touch it?
Don't spray it on me. Don't spray it on me.
Now he's putting on his fire boots and his fire pants. These are big, heavy rubber boots with metal on the bottom so no nails poke through from the bottom. These are really heavy and warm.
Everything we do revolves around preparing for that 2% of the time that we actually fight the fire or handle the emergency. It's only 2% of our time.
I didn't realize when I got into this profession how much time is actually involved in training and drilling and learning about new issues and preparing yourself for the next incident or things that you might not have seen or you might have learned about but you haven't yet encountered that. There's a lot of hours in preparation to keeping up on those skills.
The fire department isn't proud of the major fires they had. What first thing we should do is critique it to see what caused it, and of course that's our obligation by law, and then what we could have done to prevent it, and what we did wrong in putting it out. We have to improve our condition. We went to the space program and borrowed their sound. We have to improve our condition. We went to the space program and borrowed their Indy 500 and got the jaws of life or the rescue tools to cut open cars on the highways, let alone the racetrack. So we are improving our condition.
It's gotten more complicated. It's not simple wood burning anymore. We go into any structure fire dealing with hazardous materials. We have to be prepared for that. We have to know ahead of time what we're going into. We've looked at things not from the way we've always done them, because if you do things the way you've always done, you'll get what you've always got.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 and 15. What do we do now? Give 2 breaths. What's the next thing you do?
Then we want to drop down to the ground. Okay. And then what do we want to cover up? Our face. Why do we want to cover up our face?
So smoke doesn't get in your face.
The kids are very aware of what's going on. They plan all their exits. They know they have to have 2 ways out, and they take that home, and they get the adults to also do that.
There's an old saying in the fire service, 200 years of tradition unimpeded by change. And with our department, we'd like to flip it around. We've got 50 years of progress unimpeded by tradition.
I think one of the most valuable management tools that I have, and one that requires time but pays off the best, is building relationships.
One of the things that the chief asked me to do was go out one night a week and just visit the stations and see that training was being accomplished and evaluate. And one of the stations I visited, when I left the station, I walked out the door and I was walking in my car, and the company officer came out and followed me, and he said, thanks. He says, thanks for stopping in and just talking to us and letting us know where we're going.
Our business cards have right on it, fire prevention is our business, your business, good business. That's unheard of. But if we don't do it, and if the fire chief says, shut the door and sit quietly, they're going to get hurt in the long run. You know who's really going to get hurt is the people they protect. And a community that doesn't have an active fire department is really missing something.
It helps you so you know what to do when a real fire gets to your house. Feel if the doors are hot or not, because if it's hot, there can be a fire. Try and get out as fast as you can. Call 911. You should let one alone. You You should step, drop, and walk.
Well, do you see the point now? Can anybody see it? Huh? We always assume that the job of the fire service is to put out fires, when truthfully, the job of the fire service is to prevent fires. You see what happens when we put what is not so important first? Have you noticed that most of our fire stations are waiting for trouble? And the problem is because you are waiting, there's a lot of slackness. They're ill prepared. They don't respond on time. Things don't work simply because we've gotten our priorities. So what does the fire service do? It educates, right? It inspects buildings. Am I making sense? It trains and retrains. It reviews fires, all in a bid to do what? Now, but let me ask you, what is truly the most important job of a fire service? I've said what they've done. I've said, number one, that we thought it was to put out fires. Now we know it's to prevent fires. But what is more important beyond putting out fires and preventing fires? What is it? Huh? So what? I'm sorry? To train people? No. What else? To save lives. Do you see what happens to us? If the UCH people knew that their job was to save lives, what will happen? Not go and pay. Who knows what I'm talking about in UCH? If policemen knew that their job was to save, I don't know if you get my point, to prevent crime, not to go after armed robbers. Is it making any sense to anybody? This is the shift. That's why this is called a paradigm shift. You need to change. You need to move. What is your objective? I'll give you a good example. Remember this young man who gave his life to his uncle, I forgot his uncle's name, Jacob, gave his life to his uncle and worked for 7 years for one wife, ended up working for 14. Remember that? Come on, am I making sense? Then after that, he was earning a salary, and then one day he came to his senses and he said, how shall I provide for my family? Remember that's what he said? As soon as he put I was in UI yesterday speaking to a group of young people, and I said this to them. I said, phone treat you. Now they are allowed to hospital till your bill is paid, but they are not allowed to reject treatment from anybody who needs it, especially in an emergency. Do we have that going on in our country right now? Now the government is going to say we're going to be overwhelmed. But if they put first things first, of educating people, of making sure that they provide water, they make sure that they do the things that almost seemingly are not connected. The bill, for instance, you are at the root. When can I provide for your mind suddenly opens. Possibilities become apparent to you. Your zeal and your ability to chase after something changes when you get your priorities right. Are you here? I have one more clip. It's 4.5 minutes long. It talks about the process. Is this making sense to somebody today? Listen to me. We have to go and park our car in quadrant 2 as a church. I found out something about us. We respond very well to crisis. We're good at it. Look at what happened here. World Cup. They took light in our stadium. In the how many years of World Cup, 50 or 60 years of World Cup history, no nation, Liberty Stadium here in Ibadan, no nation has ever done that. It's in the Guinness Book of Records or something. We were an embarrassment. It wasn't that there wasn't a generator. It wasn't that there wasn't a system on the ground. It was untested. There are many other things we've done. How many of you know what happened in Abuja? The Abuja runway was built for 20 years. You're supposed to resurface your runway after every 20 years. Abuja runway is 30-something years old. They didn't resurface it. They had to shut down the Federal Capital Airport for 6 weeks. Not to resurface, to fix the potholes. It was due for another runway. We didn't put first things first. Let me ask you a question. The amount of money that they lost or they spent in 6 weeks compared to have resurfaced the runway 20 years ago and started building another one, I promise you it would have been cheaper to have acted on it that time than now. There are things God puts above. One of the things you got to look about the Americans is this. If there's an American stranded somewhere, the Navy SEALs or whatever commandos will go there to rescue one person, and 10 people can die, but they will rejoice at rescuing one person because they realize that if they continue to value human beings will be sold out to the country. The reason why none of us is loyal to this country is because we feel this country doesn't value us. And it doesn't. The process is important. It's a bit difficult for you to get it all, but it's a repetition of what Mrs. Adefisayo taught us last week. Now listen, and I pray your eyes will be open. Amen?
Let's go through the 6 steps. Step number 1, connect to your mission. In other words, connect to your overall philosophy, your sense of what your life is about, your vision for your life, how you see yourself, the kind of contribution, the kind of character, and the value system, hopefully centered upon principles. You connect to that first. Everything gets connected to that. You see, habit 2, begin with the end in mind, is the habit of personal leadership. It basically means to get a clear sense of what your life is about. Habit 3, you manage according to that leadership, according to that mission statement. That's why the first activity that you do is to connect to your mission. That's where you have the burning yes about what your life is about that gives you the courage to say no to quadrants 3 and 4. Particularly 3, because there's so much social value system driving quadrant 3, and it takes an enormous amount of courage. That's why you always want to review and connect to your mission. The very next step that you go into outlines your whole life around roles, which basically means relationships. Study the roles that you have in your life. Study what you put down. You probably put down the roles having to do with your family, the key roles that you have in your work. You may be a department head, you may be a manager, you may be a technician in a particular engineering department, you may be a member of an executive committee, you may be a CEO, but you also want to think about your social roles, your community roles. Notice that's the second activity. Then you'll notice you set up your goals around each of those roles. Quadrant 2. Quadrant 2. When you set up your roles and goals, you're identifying quadrant 2. Then you organize weekly. Why weekly? Why not daily? If you're into daily, what quadrant are you in? By definition, you're into quadrant 1. Because if you organize on a daily basis, you're dealing with the urgencies. The smallest unit of planning would be a week. And then you have to adapt on a daily basis, even on an hourly basis. On what basis do you adapt? On the basis of integrity. If you have educated your conscience into principles, you will have the inward sense. You'll adapt instantly. Your scheduling is very soft. You're very hard on being principle-centered, but your scheduling is soft. And people know it, and they respect it. And they will respect your time. You exercise integrity in the moment of choice, and then you evaluate. You stand back, reflect. How's it going? Roles, goals, execute around them. I go through the 6 steps. Connect to the mission, review roles, select goals, organize on a weekly basis, use integrity in the moment of choice, evaluate. Organize the whole week within the context of a longer-term plan, within the context of the mission. This is essentially the whole week. I can relax now because I know when I'm going to have my private date with my daughter, Jenny, this week. I know when I'm going to exercise. I know when I'm going to have an opportunity to go with my wife on this little Honda trail cycle that we go on almost every day of our life that I'm home, because I've scheduled it. If something more important comes up, that's fine, but I try to put the big rocks in first. I put the mission statement at the top, and then I just put the different roles. Then your life is balanced. See, most time management approaches teach prioritization. That's good. But what about balance? You don't want to prioritize yourself up a ladder of success leaning against the wrong wall. And you don't want to focus on schedules. It's on relationships. So all the roles involve relationships. And it's very personal. First role is the relationship to deity. It's my first and highest priority. Second, family. Third, neighbor in the large sense. I want to contribute in significant ways where there is nothing in it except that kind of service. And I'm sure many of you do. So any church work, any community service, citizenship work, and good causes would be under neighbor. Then chairman of a company, so I'm interested in preparing for our board of directors meeting. So I set down the goal of what kind of preparation so that we can make sure that material is sent out in time for people to prepare. Then I have writer, and then as a role as a friend. The point is, you organize around every role that you have, and you look on them as stewardships.
All right. Now, the videos are available at the desk. You can get them. The book is available online. It's free. You can get it. Even the audio is available online on YouTube, free of charge. It's up to you. When you identify, I'm a pastor, I'm a father, I'm a businessman, I must understand what the first things first are on each of the roles that I play in my life. What's the most important thing? That's what he's talking about, organizing yourself. You can't say, well, I'm going to do first things first on one part of your life and leave the others, because you will be unbalanced. Yesterday I had to speak to some young boys. They gave me the topic, manhood. And for 4 weeks, I've been turning it in my head. What do you teach these kids? And they put it there that, oh, Miles Monroe, John Maxwell. So I knew what they were expecting. I'll go to Miles Monroe's teaching, break it down. And I said, but if I do that, they could easily Google it. Why do they need me? It was a big problem for me. I kept turning it around in my head. So when I got there, the young man got up and gave a dictionary. I haven't even started. He gets up and gives a dictionary definition of manhood. And so I stand up and I correct him and I said, a dictionary doesn't tell you the meaning of a word. It tells you how a word has been used. Some of you don't know that. It just tells you how a word has been used. And I said this to them. I said, one of the biggest problems we have is that somebody gives you a model of something and you forget that you have your own personality that has to go with what a man is. I said, for instance, without a clear-cut vision for your life, you wouldn't know what it requires for you to be a man. I said, for instance, a few weeks ago, one of my greatest joys in this church is that the children run to me and they have no problem walking up to me. They sit in my office, they take my granite, they come and play with me, and sometimes they can be very burdensome. I'm not saying it's easy to do that, but I really like it. And I said to them, Jesus allowed children to come to him. I said, for me, that makes me a man. I don't know if you get the point I'm trying to make. Makes me a man. Because I have that trait that is similar to my Savior. I don't know if you get the point I'm making. Are you here? Some men, children don't run around them. Some men of God, people don't run around them because that's the way they want to present themselves. I'm not saying they are wrong, but I'm saying their definition of manhood is different. Are you getting my point? But I said this. The other day, I was taking a tour around the compound, and I was taking Dr. Degbola with me, and I remember there was a third person, and we walked to the children's church. As we arrived there, 1/3 of the children ran to my side and ran around me and kept me delayed. But guess what? 2/3 of them overwhelmed Dr. Degbola. They almost fell him down. As a matter of fact, I managed to escape the kids and get to where I was going. We had to wait for Dr. Degbola for about 5 minutes, calming the kids down to sit down. And I thought, that's a man. Don't let anybody, I said to them yesterday, the only person whose pattern is right for you to be a man is Jesus. Oh, he was there. It's Jesus. There is no other pattern. I said, for instance, how many of you were told when you were growing up that it's not a man's job to cook? But I can show you that Esau cooked better than his mother. How many of you say it's the man's job to look after the children and know when they're sick? But I can show you in the Bible of a man who brought his son to Jesus and knew the whole history of the boy's sickness. So where do you get this impression from? The best one I like is that men don't cry, but Jesus wept. And Jeremiah is known as the weeping prophet. Where do you get your role models from? Where do you get your priorities from? Other people's lives? Nobody has to tell me. Many of the men in this church have been trapped in quadrant 1. I don't mean any disrespect. Believe me, I don't. But if I drop dead today, at least I left something for my kids. What about you? And I'm not talking about buildings. We have that. Money in the bank, we don't have. That should be your priority. There are men who will drive 5 million naira cars and live in 1 million naira apartments. They won't build. There are men who will spend more on their 50th birthday than they will spend on their whole family in 1 year. You only have 90, 110 years to live. What are they going to say about you when you've gone? You have to put first things first. Like he said, when you do it, you enter into rest. I listened to Bill Johnson yesterday, and I'm going to close on this. Bill said it's taken him 20-something years. He stopped asking God why. Especially when bad things happen. He said he used to sit down and say, when somebody dies in the family, he would go, why? Why did they die? Why did they do this? Why that? He says after a while he realized that, not that you shouldn't ask God why, because God himself demands for you to ask him why. He says, ask of me concerning my kids. Am I making sense? But this is what he said. He said, one thing I've learned in my faith is that rather than ask God why, I always prefer to ask God, what's next? What should I do next? And immediately came to mind David when his son was almost dead and he began to fast and pray. Crying and weeping, not sleeping. And what happened afterwards? The boy died. And they said this man was fasting and praying and crying and weeping. The boy was still alive. Now that the boy is dead, this guy is going to kill himself. And he said, is the boy dead? They said, yes. He went, took a bath, washed himself, and went to rejoice in the presence of God. What's next, Lord? Every failure you make in life, just ask God, what's next? What's next? You may have been living in quadrant 1, in quadrant 3, and in quadrant 4. But you can say to God this morning, what's next to get me to quadrant 2? That's where you need to live. You have to buy the future now. Who's closing the service? Please, can we rise? I want you to make a commitment this morning. Please. We may not come back to this topic for another 2 years or 3. Be proactive. Begin with the end in mind. I said to those boys yesterday, I said, why you should be a man is more important than how you should be a man. Because the how is circumstantial. But the why is eternal. I've tried to spend my time this morning telling you why you need to be in quadrant 2. Some of us are paying a huge price for it. People who have retired and their pension can't keep them. People who are retired and living in rented apartments. People who are retired and are struggling and waiting for their children to pay, give them money. They've made that mistake. You and I have an opportunity not to make the same mistake and to leave an inheritance for our children. And let me appeal to the women in this church. Move your husband from quadrant 1. Take care of quadrant 1. My wife does that for me. She never asked me for food money. She never asked me for all those, you know what I mean? Those incidentals. If the generator breaks down, that's his problem. If there's no light in the house, that is his problem. But she says the things she can take care of, she will take care of it, because if I get distracted looking for 20,000 naira to buy food, you see, I can go to a generator person now and say, give me a generator for my house. He say 1 million, I say, take it to my house. He will take it. But I can't go to the market and say, give me 150 naira tomatoes. They won't give me. That's because of the way I built myself. Am I making sense? So if I need brand new batteries for my inverter, I'll make a phone call. They'll deliver it. I say, I'll pay you in 2 months' time. They'll do it. But if I go to the market and say, go to ShopRite and say, I want 2 baskets full of food for my family for this weekend, they will say, sorry, where's your card? Where's your ATM card? Wives, you can move your husband to second quadrant if you will just take care of the first. Tell him to build a house. Tell him to leave an inheritance. Tell him to leave a legacy. Tell him to prepare for the children's school fees. Tell him to send money into the future. Let him pay for the health insurance. Let him take care of those big things while you take care of the little. Every time you drag him back into quadrant 1, you're doing yourself a major disservice. I know I'm taking my time, but I know why I'm taking my time this morning. Enough of the rubbish. The things you listen to in this church, they're not commonplace. Which means from whom much is given, much more is expected. Your life is supposed to be outstanding. And too many of our men here trapped in quadrant 1 because somebody's always criticizing them in the morning, complaining about them in the afternoon, telling them what they are not doing all the stupid things. You take care of it. I borrowed 500,000 naira from my wife, or my wife borrowed 500,000 naira for me to finish this building. I forgot. Can you believe that? I forgot, Pastor. About 6 months or so, a year later, I said, sweetheart, I borrowed 500,000 from you. I haven't paid. She said, don't worry, I've paid, but don't come back. Don't come back. It's very convenient for you to forget my own habit. I said, I paid, but you don't come back and borrow again. Next time, go and borrow yourself. But the lesson was clear. She knew I was distracted, but she paid. You think I'm going to see another young girl walking like this around town and I'll follow her? That will be collecting the 500,000 and giving it to me. I know what I have. And I'm going to cherish it until the day I die. What about you? Bow your heads this morning. of my life. You are the hope that I cling to. You mean more than this world to me. I wouldn't trade you for silver or gold. I wouldn't trade you for riches untold. You are my everything. You are the love of my life. You are the hope that I cling to. You mean more than this world to me. I wouldn't trade you for silver or gold. I wouldn't trade you for riches untold. You are my everything. You are my everything. You are my everything.
You know, the first thing that came to my mind was, how do you pray? How do you pray? Right now, I'm confused. How do you pray? The only thing I can think about right now is this, that I surrender. I've come to a point whereby all I can do at this time is surrender and say, God, take control. I surrender, God, take control. In other words, I'm saying, like Pastor said, what is next? Help me to move to that next level. And that's the prayer I want us to pray this morning. Whether you can pray in the understanding, whether you can pray in the spirit, I just want you to pray and begin to ask God to help you. You know, I don't know why that song had been ringing in my head for the past 2 weeks. The song says, oh God, our help in ages past. Our shelters from the thorny blast. It says another part of that line says, our eternal hope. I want you to pray this morning that the God who helped Abraham, that same God who helped Isaac, that same God who helped Jacob, would help you this morning. You know, he said, Jacob says, give me a portion. It is God that brought him to that place to understand that he needs to take a portion and not a salary. So you're going to ask God this morning to help you. As you surrender this morning, as you're surrendering to him, be the man, be the woman this morning. God, come and help me. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender this morning. I surrender this morning. I surrender this morning. Under your hand, I surrender myself. I surrender my life. surrender this morning. We surrender this morning. We surrender this morning. Withholding nothing. Withholding nothing. Withholding nothing. Withholding nothing. Withholding nothing. Lord, we surrender this morning. We surrender. We surrender. We surrender. We surrender. We surrender. I 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 surrender. Thank you. We surrender, Lord, this morning. And we ask for your help. We ask for your grace. We ask for a release of your strength to take us to the next level, to bring us to that place of what is next, that we begin to put first things first. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you, O God. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just lift your hands and begin to thank him. And begin to appreciate him. Thank him for his help that has come. Thank him for his grace that is here to move us forward, to bring us to put first things first in our lives, in our homes, in our ministry, in this nation. Thank you. Thank you. Blessed be your name, O God. We give you the praise. We give you the glory. We thank you for the vessel that you have used this morning. Lord, that you will water him again in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. You cause his feet to be like hinds' feet, strong, O God, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. That he also shall stand as a model in this land, in this generation, in the name of Jesus. Blessed be your name, O God. We give you praise. We give you glory. In Jesus' mighty name. And let the people of God say amen. Let the people of God say amen.